The Port of Los Angeles is the nation's busiest port, representing over $217 billion in trade through the month of September this year. The October numbers are due out any day now. The port borders the south end of LA City's 15th Council District. The 15th and the port have a partnership in some major projects along the waterfront. Joining us tonight to tell us all about the changes is Tim McOsker, Councilmember for the 15th District. Welcome to Inside the Issues. Thanks so much for coming in. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
We're happy to have you, and we want to talk a lot about this development in San Pedro Waterfront. It's one of the biggest projects that you have there working with the port to get it done. Just tell us about why that development's so important.
Well, the Port of Los Angeles is a commercial port. It's a working port. It's been very industrial forever. And what's been important over the last several years preceding me, and certainly today, is to make sure that that interface between the working port and the communities that surround the port, Wilmington and San Pedro particularly, that we have an interface that is healthy and safe and conducive to raising families and having strong communities. And so what we're doing is making sure that while we are protecting great jobs and making sure that we're moving cargo and doing all the things that a healthy industrial port should do, that we also have great visitor-serving amenities and recreational opportunities and places where folks can go and enjoy the waterfront, because that part of the blue economy is also important, making sure that we are, entertaining visitors and also having places where local residents can go and just enjoy the water.
Yeah, good for the local people, good for the people coming off those cruise ships. It's right. Important to make it an attractive place, and you want to invest in your community. So just talk about some of the ways, some of the amenities, some of the things that you have in mind there for the development.
Absolutely. So, the LA side, by the way, let's back up and just say that the Port of Los Angeles the port complex is both Long Beach and LA. And on the LA side, it's the adjoining communities are Wilmington and San Pedro. In Wilmington, we're on the second phase of the Waterfront Promenade, and we have several acres of property that early next year will be open that have a park-like atmosphere and have beautiful, recreational opportunities to be down on the water. As you come along the San Pedro side, we have the West Harbor development, which is a commercial development. A lot of Angelinos will remember Ports of Call, and Ports of Call has been redeveloped now, or is under redevelopment. And that facility is now coming up out of the ground, and middle of next year, the first phase will be complete in construction, and by the end of the year, beginning of 2025, we'll open up phase one of West Harbor.
Amazing. Well, and we saw in the plans, too, there's a 6,200-seat amphitheater.
Right.
That's interesting. It seems expensive. Seems like congregating that many people at the port maybe previously had been something of a security risk from a homeland security standpoint, too. Isn't that right after 9/11?
Well, security would be one issue. Also, just the basics of circulation and making sure that we can get that many people in and out safely.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a port community, there's typically only a couple ways in and a couple ways out.
Right.
The amphitheater project is actually still under environmental review, and so we are doing that analysis to make sure that we have the ability to build it and to be able to move that many people along the waterfront, and parking and transportation and just getting folks in and out safely, and the sort of the noise and the light issues for adjacent communities is really important. So I want to be clear, we're analyzing that. But it could be a great possibility for the waterfront.
Yeah, it sounds a really attractive thing for the community. So we're talking about security, talking about the environmental review, as I mentioned earlier, too. It sounds expensive, not just the amphitheater, but in general, this development. But there's a way in which the port will help pay for that, right? Talk about that program, the PAIP.
Right. So the PAIP, not an acronym that I developed, doesn't trip off the tongue,
yeah,
right?
We both got it out there,
It's the Public Access Infrastructure Program. And the idea with the PAIP was developed back in 2015. And it was an opportunity for the port, I think, to end the 100-year war or to be a good neighbor. And what the port said is, we will take 10% of our operating revenue and we will set it aside for 10 years. So from 2015 until the end of next year, the port said we're going to set aside 10% of our operating revenue. They estimated it would be about $200 million over that 10 years and invest it into public access, the waterfront promenades, all of the hard infrastructure that would allow the things that are happening today. The money actually was a little bit more than $200 million, about $250 million, a little more than that actually. And when I came into office, I went to the commission and said, let's make this a permanent program. Let's make that 10% of operating revenues be no less than 10%. So in good years, maybe we can go higher. And also, let's make sure as we move forward that the public is actively engaged in what sort of improvements continue to be invested in that interface between our residents and the waterfront.
So it's incentive, obviously, also for you to see that port be busy because there's some revenue coming to help improve that area there. You're talking about, also earlier today, you and I were talking before we started on air about a meeting on the Wilmington side to talk about some of the developments and cleanup.
Right. So on the Wilmington side, one of the things that's really critically important is that we make sure that we're investing in Wilmington and making sure there's equity in how we invest. And right now in Wilmington, we're in the second phase of the Waterfront Promenade. I had an opportunity today to appear in front of the Harbor Commission and urge the Harbor Commission, and they certainly were willing to do so, but to urge the Harbor Commission to work with the Department of Water and Power, another gigantic proprietary entity in the city, to make sure that they do a land swap and to seamlessly finish the Wilmington Promenade area. And fortunately, the Commission was very amenable to doing so, and so now we have DWP and the Port of Los Angeles, again, two superpowers within the city, working together to make sure that we finish that project.
I think you saw earlier in our show, we were having this conversation after the DA forum, and also there was a meeting there about some of the crime that was happening in the Hancock Park area. The perception and the reality around crime rates, people's experience sometimes make them feel like I'm seeing video, this happened to my neighbor, but the data might not back it up. What's happened there in CD15 with the issue, and where do you stand on it?
Well, throughout the 1.5, what I say in every community is that we could talk all day about statistics, and we should, but if people don't feel safe, they're not safe. We need people to feel safe. And so our ethic in the 1.5 and throughout from Watts all the way to the water is that there is no reason to take the public out of public safety. So in Watts, for example, we have something called the Community Safety Partnership. And it is a close relationship between uniformed officers and the community. And we also bring in non-uniformed personnel. We bring in peace ambassadors and interventionists, people from the community who know how to take control of their own public safety. And it works. The Community Safety Partnership works. In the lower stretches of the district, we have just a great advantage of having very distinct communities that are very much engaged in their own public safety. We have the CPABs, which are police advisory boards, in the district and in the southern reaches of the district. We have a very active CPAB in the Harbor Division. And in each one of our communities, Wilmington and subparts of Wilmington and in San Pedro, we have these community groups that really work closely together with our police officers. So I feel like we have the tools that we need to make sure that the public is engaged in their own public safety. And, you know, violent crime, now we'll go to stats. Violent crime is down. Property crimes are up. And that's real. And that, you know, when people experience property crimes or know of friends and neighbors who experience property crimes, they feel violated. And so it's information and engagement and making sure we're in partnership with officers.
Well, I got to say, it is refreshing to hear that there are programs that you're working on, and for you to articulate them, I think gives people some hope that there are solutions that are at least being experimented with and working, and you feel like they're working well. I want to thank you for coming in, giving us a sense of what's happening with development on the waterfront, and of course with this important issue of crime. Great to have you. Hope to talk to you about it more.
My pleasure. I hope to come back.
Absolutely. Councilmember Tim McOsker there from the CD15.